It's like sometime after 5 on Friday, 24th, I think. I just, after I uploaded my Twinkie video, I just had a look at my videos Separate uploaded, and I saw that I had no idea, but I had uploaded some stuff about the bullying from Justin and Ricky. And yeah, I didn't know that, and I was thinking, oh shit, maybe I better take them down, because a lot of people don't understand the difference between someone's privacy and someone committing a vicious crime against a vulnerable person who has recorded that crime. And it's people often take that, you can't violate their privacy while they're abusing you. The Privacy Act in New Zealand doesn't override the Crimes Act or other, like the Harassment Act or other such acts, Human Rights Act and stuff. So the Privacy Act is actually quite weak legislation, whereas the Crimes Act is very strong legislation. And what I was recording, because if I don't record it, no one sees it. But this is what happens to me everywhere. And again, you fall into that trap where people think, oh, well, you're the common denominator. Sometimes someone is the common denominator in the sense what is implied is that they are the common factor and they are the cause of the problem. In other cases, it just means that they're very vulnerable and they're serially victimised because nobody steps in to do anything. And I'm almost always alone. I have someone who's supporting me briefly, but he's, he's a traveller and he's moving up the island, so I don't have him for very long. So I'm already getting quite a strong panic response from seeing that. Now, I don't think I remembered uploading it because what I did that night, because the abuse didn't stop, and I just realised that there's nothing left for me. I know that there isn't anything. I know there's nothing. I've known that for a long time, but as I've said before, the urge to, the human urge to survive is very strong. It's not rational, but it is strong. And I did have a stash of meds that I had not been, that I just wasn't going to take. I just took a while to, it doesn't matter. I had a stash. That's nothing that I usually take, but I just carried with me because I'm not really sure. But I carry with me just sort of like an emergency exit. And so I went to bed and I took a couple of sleeping pills and a couple of benzodiazepines just to sort of soften, to get myself into a state where I could cope with taking my life. And I was doing some things that I don't remember very clearly because of that, just trying to put some preparations in place, and that was including trying to do some banking so I could pay someone something that I didn't think I'd be alive to pay for, that kind of thing. So I was doing a few loopy things, and I don't remember uploading that. But I actually want to follow on what happened. So I woke in the morning, or sometime, the next day, and felt like shit, but I was alive. And it's not a big surprise because I don't really know what I'm doing. But the manager, and his name is Farhan, he came in, he said, I want to talk to you. I said, I don't want to talk to you. He said, can you open my blind, and he served me a trespass notice and said, you need to be out by 6. He said, you've had plenty of time to correct your behaviour. Now I'm sure that I have, but he has never replied to me. No one at Lylo had ever replied to me when I said, I really value feedback. I'm on the autism spectrum. I don't automatically pick up on what other people might think is appropriate. If I've done anything wrong, I really need to know. I really value feedback, and I can show all of this in written record and the fact that no one's replied. So I don't think that I've broken any rules at all. I think what I've done is I've held them accountable. They don't like that. They probably don't think. I don't think Farhan thinks that he's broken any rules. I think Farhan thinks that he gets to make the rules as the general manager. I don't think he's aware that he has to act within the laws of New Zealand while he does that. Now, you also can't trespass somebody who is a lawful occupier. And I've sent them sections of the Trespass Act that show that they've granted me lawful occupier status by dint of a contract between them and us, and that was brokered via booking.com, where they accepted my booking. They welcomed me. Hi, Caitlin, we're really pleased to have you. They accepted the booking. They accepted my payment. I paid at the counter the last time. That is a contract that is telling you that for this period of time you have paid to lawfully occupy this space. They cannot trespass me. But I also know that police don't understand the law, and I also know that they just think, well, they don't want you here anymore, and that's the end of it. And it's like, no, that's true, they don't want me here anymore, but that's not what the law says. The law doesn't just go with the person who has more power, who wants something. The law has to go to protect the more vulnerable party. Now, the more vulnerable party isn't necessarily always in the right, but we do have laws there to protect people's rights, because without there being people to actually stand up and enact those laws, people with no power, we can't have law of the jungle when not all of us have the power. Now, I paid for that time, and I had already given notice. I didn't want to stay there anymore, so I was going to leave in 2 days anyway, which was today actually, but this was Wednesday. Now, I was in my pyjamas. Could barely, I did not trust my legs. I was very wobbly. I went into the reception area, which was quite difficult for me. Farhan and a receptionist was there. I'm not going to mention her name, but I think she's quite a nice person. But I have a witness, and I've written who that is. Farhan was there. I said, Farhan, I overdosed last night because of the treatment that I've been receiving here. It didn't work, but I'm very unwell. And before I could continue and say anything, Farhan said, I don't care. I'm not talking to you. The discussion is over. I said, you have broken so many laws. He says, I am no longer talking to you, Caitlin, and he went into his office. So he knew that he may not have known that he didn't have a lawful right to trespass me, but he knew that I was very unwell from an overdose, from bullying by the staff and their preferred customer, who says at the end of the recording there, I'm not paying anything, which is up to accounts or more senior management, but it's like this blatant favouritism, and morally, perhaps legally, they can exercise favouritism to certain customers, but they can't do it at the detriment of someone else's legal rights or well-being, which is what they've done. Now, I was just distraught and dismayed, and I could barely think and I could barely walk, and I went back and I went into the common area, and I approached my one supporter and I told him what had happened. I don't want to go into the whole story now, but long story short, he really did not know what to do. I went back to bed because I was just almost passed out.
You all right?
Yes, I am. And then there was another Lylo staff member who came to be very kind and gentle with me, and she says I've trained as a nurse, and I just want to check you a little bit. Obviously she didn't have any equipment with her, but because Neville, sorry, I shouldn't say his name, but this nice person had called the ambulance. I mean, what else could you do? I wanted to talk to the police, but the police are abusing me anyway, so I think they would have just kicked me out anyway. Whatever this is, it's not legal, but at least being taken away in an ambulance was somewhere that I could go. So I just want to say, long story short, what happened. I was checked out. I was also checked out by the psych team. Don't qualify. I was discussed for a couple of days. I was interviewed again later. They're sympathetic to what's going on, but I'm psychiatrically cleared. I've been discharged from my very brief reintroduction to the service. It's not a mental health problem. Police need to just butt the fuck out when it comes to mental health. Suicide is not a mental health problem. Suicide is a need to escape something. That thing could be a mental health problem, but it's not the same thing as a mental health problem. And I had a couple of days before a welfare check from a police officer that Ricky had called. And that was the confrontation. He was like, why did you call the police? Now, that police officer was repulsive. I didn't call him. I have told police so many times, do never, ever, ever send a welfare check to me again. I estimate I've had 30 of them in a year. What do they hope to achieve? Do your job. This is a criminal problem. This is not a welfare check problem. Sort out the criminals. That's what you can do. Now, when people call the police for me, the police blame me. They think I'm responsible. I don't know how they twist their brains into knots into thinking I'm responsible for their being contacted when I've asked the police very many times, please leave me alone, and I've got written guarantee from police that I won't be visited anymore. So I don't know how the fuck this guy managed to make this my fault, but he said to me, and I didn't start recording on my phone, but I've got the end bit. So he said to me, you are wasting police time and you are an attention seeker. That's what he said to me. And what I did get on tape is his saying, I don't care if you kill yourself. I don't care if you commit suicide. Okay. There's a little context, but there's not much. There's no context that would make that okay. Right? That's utterly repugnant. That's a fucking disgrace. That has to be gross misconduct. So I got checked out, and then I was very, very groggy. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I was told I was going to be seeing a social worker. I don't know who it was I saw. I just saw some guy in a white t-shirt. They don't say where he didn't say where he was from. He just said, we can't shelter you. There's nowhere for you to go here. We can't forward you anywhere. He said, you have to go home. And I said, I don't have a home. Everybody knew that. I didn't have a home. And he says, well, you just have to go somewhere else. And I said, I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere. And he said, well, you just have to go in the street. And I knew that I had to, but the horror, and I was just whimpering, and I was looking at him, and I just couldn't believe that they were going to make me do that. And as I left, he just said, thank you. And it's like, how dare people tell me that I need to stay alive? How dare they? Once again, if every life were precious, would people be treated like this? I don't think so. I am the person to judge the value of my life. And when I say my life is worthless, I don't mean that I am worthless. I'm saying my life is worthless. I slept in a bus stop. I was freezing cold. I was in my pyjamas. He let me take a sheet with me. The bus stop was fairly nearby, and it had those barriers. Like there was sort of wide enough for a fat person to sit. And that's where I had to like squeeze my body into, so my head was against a metal armrest. And I could splattered seeds and the wind was coming in underneath, and I couldn't do anything to protect myself, and I didn't have any of my meds, so I couldn't even take a clone or a clozapam. And I kept having kind of nice little dreams, and then waking up and then realising I'm sleeping in a bus stop and I have nowhere to go. When I get up, there's nowhere to go to. I had some very lovely help at about 6:30 or so, I can't remember, but I went back into ED simply because I was shivering, like I was really shivering. And I just went back into ED and I just said, and a nurse rushed up to me and she asked me if I wanted a wheelchair, and she thought I was there to be triaged, and I just had to explain that I've been discharged and I slept outside and I just was hoping to get warm. And she brought me a heated blanket. But I wasn't a patient, I was just a sort of nuisance. And she was so lovely. And the thing is that there are individual people there who really care. And I don't know what the law is, or I know hospitals are really overpacked. And I'm not saying my need was greater than anybody else's, but I was so desperate for sleep and I was so groggy and I was just so cold and upset. And I had a lot of help from a really amazing ED social worker. And trying to help me was not her job. I had been discharged medically. She didn't make the rules. She spent a long time with me trying to get through and find somewhere that I could stay, and she was having no luck. So anyone who says, I hang in there, there's somewhere, it's not true. It's not true. There is nowhere. And I just am sick of people challenging me on that. There is nowhere for me to go. I am not sleeping on the street again. The maths is obvious. I have some accommodation for a little while, but it's not a home, and I can't live my life like this, trying to find places that where I'm not abused, and I'm so paranoid every time I'm staying somewhere that someone's just going to kick me out for whatever reason. And I can't ever get any justice, and I don't have time to find any justice. I'm just trying to survive. And that was my experience at Lylo Christchurch. There's a lot more to it than that. the ambulance staff talking to the ED staff, and I gather that the ED staff had asked Fahan why Caitlin had been trespassed, and the answer that came back was that I had been leaving messes on the bench. There is a tiny grain of truth to that is entirely inaccurate, as it always is. Like, even to say there's a tiny grain of truth is to overvalue the amount of truth that is in that statement, but it made a reference to something completely different. It was far from the truth. I was spending a lot of time cleaning the kitchen. That's what I do. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't leave messes in the kitchen. And so what that seems to me is that they actually didn't have a reason to trespass me. They just had to come up with some fucking bullshit. And I can't remember if it was the ambulance staff or the nurse, but whatever they said, yeah, they didn't find the answer plausible. The horror of knowing that I had to walk out that door into the cold at 11:30 at night. It was a cold night. And find somewhere to sleep. I was whimpering. I'm never going through that again. No one has any right to tell me my life is going to get better. It's just got worse and worse and worse. I've spent my first fucking night on the street. Okay? Does it seem like things are getting better? No. And there is nowhere for me to go. It's been very thoroughly checked out. There is nowhere for me to go.